Welcome back to USA Car Reviews, the channel where we take a deep dive into the classics, the icons, and the machines that helped shape the automotive world. Today, we're stepping into a story that spans generations, a car that has been loved by millions across the globe, and a model year that carried both charm and practicality. We're talking about the 1973 Volkswagen Beetle, a car that might not boast roaring horsepower or futuristic technology, but one that carved its place in history through simplicity, reliability, and timeless design. The Volkswagen Beetle, often affectionately called the Bug, had already been around for decades by the time 1973 rolled around. With roots stretching back to the 1930s, the Beetle had become one of the most recognizable cars in the world. By the early 70s, it wasn't just a car, it was a cultural symbol. From college campuses to city streets, from suburban driveways to country backroads, the Beetle was everywhere. And the 1973 model year was particularly significant because it marked a moment of subtle but important change in the Beetle's evolution. From the outside, the 1973 Beetle didn't stray far from the formula people had come to know and love. Its rounded fenders, friendly curves, and bug-like profile stayed intact. But if you looked closer, you would notice a key difference. This was the year Volkswagen introduced the larger, energy-absorbing bumpers to meet US safety regulations. They stuck out further, giving the Beetle a slightly different look compared to earlier years. For some enthusiasts, it was a departure from the delicate lines of the 60s models, but for others, it added a more robust presence. Another notable change was the introduction of the curved windshield. Prior Beetles had a flat windshield, but in 1973, Volkswagen gave it a subtle curve, which not only modernized the look but also improved visibility and added a bit more interior space. This was part of Volkswagen's effort to keep the Beetle relevant in a market that was becoming increasingly competitive with cars like the Honda Civic and Datsun 510 gaining traction. Underneath the rear engine lid, the 1973 Beetle continued to rely on the tried-and-true air-cooled, flat-4 engine. Depending on the version, you'd typically find a 1,600cc engine producing around 46 horsepower. By modern standards, that number might sound tiny, but the Beetle was never about raw power. What it offered instead was reliability, simplicity, and ease of maintenance. The engine could be repaired with basic tools, parts were cheap and plentiful, and millions of owners learned to wrench on their Beetles in their own garages. It became a car that wasn't intimidating, it was approachable. Driving a 1973 Beetle was an experience all its own. With the engine buzzing away in the rear, the sound was unmistakable. It wasn't fast, but it had a certain charm. The car felt light and nimble, and though it lacked the power of muscle cars of the same era, it delivered a driving sensation that was both engaging and fun. The 4-speed manual transmission added to the experience, giving drivers a sense of connection with the machine. Even though the Beetle had limitations on the highway, around town it felt right at home. Inside, the 1973 Beetle was as simple as they come. The dashboard had minimal gauges, the seats were straightforward, and there was no excess. But that was exactly what made it appealing. It wasn't trying to impress you with luxury or technology, it was honest transportation, built for the people. The curved windshield added to the sense of space, and the car's upright seating position gave surprisingly good visibility. And of course, the interior carried that unmistakable Volkswagen smell, a combination of vinyl, air-cooled, mechanics, and nostalgia. Culturally, by 1973, the Beetle had become more than just a car. It was embraced by the counterculture movement of the 60s, and it carried that image into the 70s. While muscle cars symbolized speed and rebellion, the Beetle symbolized simplicity, individuality, and even a bit of defiance against the mainstream. It wasn't about excess, it was about practicality and personality. People decorated their Beetles with flowers, peace signs, and bright paint jobs. It was a canvas for self-expression in a way that few other cars ever were. The longevity of the Beetle also speaks volumes. By 1973, Volkswagen had already produced millions of these cars, and they were still selling strong. Owners loved them not only because they were affordable but because they lasted. With proper care, a Beetle could rack up hundreds of thousands of miles. And if something went wrong, chances were high that a neighbor or a local mechanic knew exactly how to fix it. This sense of community around the Beetle only strengthened its legend. Today, looking back at the 1973 Volkswagen Beetle, it's clear that while it may not have been revolutionary in terms of performance or technology, it was a car that delivered on its promise. It was reliable, it was fun, and it was accessible. The changes made in 1973, from the curved windshield to the larger bumpers, showed Volkswagen's commitment to keeping the Beetle alive in a rapidly changing automotive landscape. And though new models would eventually outpace it, the Beetle held on for decades more, continuing production in various forms long after most cars of its era had disappeared. For collectors and enthusiasts today, a 1973 Beetle represents a wonderful blend of old-school charm and subtle modernization. It still carries the classic look that made the Beetle so iconic, but with small updates that make it unique to its model year. Restored examples can be seen at car shows, drawing smiles from people of all ages, while survivor cars still putter along the streets, proving just how durable these little machines truly are. In the end, the 1973 Volkswagen Beetle is more than just a car, it's a symbol of an era. It represents a time when driving didn't need to be about horsepower wars or high-tech features. It was about getting behind the wheel of something honest, approachable, and full of personality. That's why, even decades later, the Beetle remains one of the most beloved cars in automotive history. Thanks for joining us today on USA Car Reviews. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the 1973 Volkswagen Beetle, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more classic car content, and let us know in the comments what memories you have of the Beetle. Whether it was your first car, a family hand-me-down, or simply a car you admired from afar, the Beetle has touched lives all over the world. And that, more than anything, is why it will always be remembered as one of the greatest cars ever built.